Hello.
Hi.
What were you gonna say?
I said, here we are.
Oh shoot. Okay, sorry.
Welcome to Historia.
I'm Kylie,
I'm Jamie.
and we are here with part two.
So,
Woo of the Terracotta Army. By the way, if you haven't listened to part one, go check that out first.
yes, it's important to know the man that's behind all of these.
Yeah. What's the point? Why? Go listen and find out.
As if you did not listen to last week, this is our first time that we have accidentally done the same topic.
Yeah, so we made it into 2 episodes.
It worked out perfectly.
It did.
I know, as soon as we had this conversation and Kylie was like, okay, like, why don't we, like, split it up or whatever? And I was like, okay, I got to redo my notes because it will drive me insane if I don't.
Yeah. I'm glad you were able to.
Yeah, luckily it is Sunday. So I had the free time to do so.
Luckily, we found out before.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine if we were recording and I was like, I'm doing this, and you'd be like, me too.
I'm glad that I asked because it was pretty early. It was like around like 11 or so, and I was taking the dogs to the park, and when you texted me about like the time to like come over and stuff, and I was like, oh, I wonder what she did. So I was like, oh, what regions did you do? And you told me, and I was like, oh no. I was like, please no, please no. And then I asked her the dynasty, and you're like Chin, and I was like,
I was just waiting for you to be like, okay, we're good. And you never did, and I was like,
I said, oh no.
yikes. So anyway, we found out before, at least.
Yeah, so I actually did a little bit more research in that short amount of time, and I actually am glad that I did because
Oh, that's good.
I discovered a little bit more like in depth of everything, so I'm glad that I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much to this topic that like I highly encourage all of you to go out and learn a little bit more or even tour here, visit here. Like if you're in China just hanging out for some reason, like go check out this place.
I wish.
So it is on. So this is the first summer bucket list item
Woo
for
woo!
this summer.
Check it out. Check it out.
Yeah. So I will most likely be doing places this summer. So
I like that idea.
yeah.
I'll do a few too.
So
Except next week.
so this should be fun. So let's just dive right on into it. So last week, Kylie went over the history of the Emperor Qin. See, I put Qin Shi Huangdi.
Okay.
So yours was like Huang.
Huang, yeah.
Yeah. So it differs depending on translation, I guess. So in his influence over China's history leading up to his death. So this week I'm taking over and covering the history of the terracotta warriors that were constructed by clay to represent his power as ruler into his afterlife. And as Kylie said, of leading pretty much if he had to battle in the afterlife, he would have that protection of his soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Important stuff.
It is very important stuff when it comes to that like religion type. Like they took it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And for him, because he did so much in the short amount of time that he was ruler, I bet if he lived longer, there would be more than how many there were.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. So we'll see. So before we get into it, I'm just going to go over the information that I got. So I got some stuff from the Smithsonian Magazine website, the UNESCO website, worldhistory.org. I also got some from China Tour Guide website and the Met Museum website. So I found some really good information on each of those. A lot of photographs, which was super helpful because I really wanted to get a feel of what it looked like.
Yeah.
Of like when you go there, like what you see, like when you first walk in. So, because what I found, like a lot of the photos that you see are of the first pit with the dome.
Yeah.
That's mostly what you see in the pictures.
Right.
But of course you have the other 2 pits
that you can visit.
Yes. So,
because the 4th pit you cannot visit at the moment.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that in our lifetime that they actually start doing a little bit more exploration on that.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
That would be awesome.
Okay. Let's get started. It is March 1974 in the Shanxi province in northwest China, a half hour from Qin. a group of farmers in this open area are digging a well. So there's like a big group of farmers. They're just digging away.
Digging. Wait, is that how it... I'm getting that mixed up with the chewing song from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I was trying to sing the whole song. Dig it. I don't even remember how that one goes.
I don't remember.
But then I thought it was the song from like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Chewing. But I was like, digging. I don't know. Anyway. Just continue.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, it's great.
So as they continued their work in a dry and fruit-growing field, they stumbled upon something that would change the area forever. The farmers came across fragments of hardened clay. What made these fragments more unique to the eyes is that they were more than just dried up pieces of earth, but that the pieces were that of a face, torso, and arms. Shocking.
Mm-hmm.
This would begin the start of exploring more of the past of the China's first emperor of the Qin dynasty. So, I need to take a little drink. Dramatic
drink.
pause.
Water break. Get your water now.
I love that.
Thank you.
So the farmers who went out to discover the pieces, they were like, holy shit, this looks old and relic-y.
Oh,
So they immediately went to the authorities with their discovery. They're like, hey, yo, check this out. This is pretty unique. And the authorities were like, holy shit, what did you just find? So from there, they went to the archaeologists who were in the area. And quickly, like as soon as the authorities were like, hey guys, we have some pretty crazy shit going on over in this area that these farmers found. Like there's just like clay fragments of like these like warrior type things. Like this is pretty crazy. And the archaeologists, like knowing somewhat of like that area, I'm sure they're like, holy shit, hold the phone. We're right there. We'll see you soon. So they showed up so quickly. Like they were like running there, like driving and running there to be like,
too.
what is going on? And of course, this is in 1974. Crazy time too. And so they're just like, okay, let's get started. We got to figure out what's going on. So pretty much it was known that the tomb was like somewhere in this area, sure. Like, but it was just fields at this point in time. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't really anything special. And these farmers had no idea. They're just trying to dig a well. Well, let's just say that did not happen. So the pieces they collected and sorted would eventually lead them to putting together a full life-size statue of one of the warriors. And I think they had just like only a few. And this shocked everyone. They're like, what the hell is this? They're like, this is pretty crazy. And of course, they had to do further inspection of just like the possibility of when this took place. And because you can tell like the time period by the armor that they wore, which I'll kind of cover a little bit, but they figured it out who it was. And they're like, no way. They're like, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
So they were so excited to finally have found the first Qin emperor's like tomb, because they had no idea.
Right.
It was not a thing. And it shocked everyone because the detail on these statues were so unique, and it was just crazy how well detailed they were. So their expressions were all different. Their hairs were different. Their outfits were different. Some had facial hair while others didn't. Mm-hmm. They were all different from one another. It was no doubt that it took a hot minute to make just one of these alone.
Oh, yeah.
Like it, for how well put together they are.
They're so detailed. If you look at pictures, it's insane. They're all making like different facial expressions.
It's crazy. It's phenomenal. Like this is a piece of art. Like this is art.
It is.
And it's crazy how quickly they got all of this done.
I know.
So archaeologists, in this discovery, archaeologists decided to keep word of this whole thing a secret for the time being, because this secrecy was due to the Cultural Revolution going on in China at the time, which was very, very serious and very sad too, because I did, because at first I was like, I don't know what the Cultural Revolution
Yeah, I don't know. I
was.
can't think right now.
But because we never learned anything about China, unfortunately,
Right.
which is so sad.
Like I can think of like 2009 type stuff, but like
But,
not
like,
70s.
In the 70s, you had the communist leader Mao, who he was trying to get rid of all of the old traditional values, kind of like how Qin was trying to do, to kind of just focus on what he was trying to like, come across. Mao was doing the same thing.
Okay.
So this was with the Communist Party, and when the archaeologists discovered that, oh my God, this is from like 2,000 years ago, like this is traditional values of just part of China's old culture, they were terrified. They're like, what if they try to like demolish it, burn it, just not make us do anything? So they kept it on the down low. They're like, we're not going to like let the news media, we're not going to tell anybody, like you have to keep quiet about this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because we don't want the government to get involved, the Communist Party to get involved, because we're terrified of what they would do.
Yeah.
So yeah, this revolution at the time was, a lot of people died too, because a lot of them protested. So it would be interesting. I would like to actually cover the Cultural Revolution at some point in China during this time, because it was absolutely devastating.
I'm glad you got that information.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't even think of that in the 70s, like why they would have to keep it a secret, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that long ago.
It
like
doesn't. It really doesn't, which is the sad part. So one of the archaeologists, Zhao, he tried to keep this discovery under wraps with all of this going on. And this only lasted a few months, because a journalist actually got word of what they were doing and what was going on and what they found. I don't know how exactly, but they wrote an article on it. Mm-hmm. Freaking, I hate journalists. But with this, they published it, and it actually got really high attraction, because of course you have the people who were all for saving the old traditions of China's history, and they loved it, and it actually got all the way up to officials in Beijing. And Zhao, he was absolutely terrified when they came to him, because he thought they were going to tell him to shut it down, but instead they actually encouraged him to continue excavating. So
good.
That was a huge shift, and I'm pretty sure he just took a deep sigh of relief of just like, finally. So the digging actually began after this. He was so excited. The whole team was so excited to actually get started. Like they were all just so pumped for this.
Yeah.
Like
that'd be so
awesome.
fun. Like, hey, what'd you find?
Exactly. And there was so much to find too.
Yeah.
So it's like there were so many people involved with this because of how massive it is.
This is so cool.
And I mean, like, they're just now discovering stuff now, like, too.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So, and they didn't expect it to be this big. Like, I'm sure it shocked all of them. But,
right.
So everything was bigger. And over time, they started to uncover more and more. And just like, it started with those few statues that they put together, and they just kept finding them. And they're like, what the hell is this? So eventually it created this mausoleum that we have now, that they have completely excavated, and is actually China's largest mausoleum. So it's wild. So the museum is actually a part of like the mausoleum and stuff. Like I saw it in pictures, which I don't mention in my notes, but like in the pictures that I saw, like when you get into like the first pit that has the dome, and it's the largest. Yeah. It's the largest out of all of them, the first one. And they have like on the top portion, because you can't actually go in there. Like I don't expect that. Right. But like they have on like the upper planks to where you can walk around, they have like not cue cards, but kind of like the giant posters of explaining each pit or like each sections and like probably what it consists of and stuff. So I thought that was really cool, of like you can actually walk in and see their work of like them, like what they excavated, but also like what it actually looks like. But that's like a part of the museum, and they have like an adjacent part of the museum as well that you can just go into, where they have up, what I saw was like when you enter the museum, they have like a room, like when you first walk in, it has like 4 different statues, and I believe one of the bronze horses.
Yeah, aren't there weapons in there too?
Yeah.
Uncovered weapons.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it pretty much has just like some things that they found during their excavation. I'm sure it has like more history, and then you probably follow your way out to go to like the mausoleum.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Mm-hmm. So from what I found, like the numbers were kind of all over the place, but the museum in total, so including like the mausoleum and whatnot, covers 16,300 square meters.
Uh-huh.
This place is huge.
Yeah.
Like it's a whole ass day that you're spending here.
Yes, they recommend spending an entire day.
Oh, 100%.
But they said you can get it done in a day. So
yeah. So
we'll talk about that later.
Exactly. So as more started to unfold about the figures, I believe more of the history did too. So what they found like from these figures helped kind of shape the history behind Chinshi. Mm-hmm. Like it's crazy. Mm-hmm. Because I'm sure like with the next successor like didn't share anything really. Like he tried to hide
they wanted
his.
to get rid of it, which is why it was, buried underground. Like everyone
Literally
wanted to get rid of that history.
Yeah.
And so they did discover like so many things about that dynasty.
Yeah, and I have found I didn't write this in my notes, but I did find it in my research, but when they were digging this, there were like slabs on top of all of the columns as they were digging it.
Uh-huh.
Like, of course, like dirt and stuff got through, but for them to be able to properly dig everything up, like there were slabs on top of like each of those columns to like where they buried it.
Yeah.
Too. So I thought that was really interesting.
That is interesting.
So last week, we were going over of like how could they have made this many? Like there were over 7,000 of these soldiers and horses and chariots like together. Like there were over 7,000 that were created in this 38-year time span, which that is a lot. So last week I discussed how there were like 30,000 families that were forced to relocate to a town or like a town that they built. So they would have to go into work to do that. So there was estimated about 700,000 who worked these statues in this 38 time span. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure they came from all over the regions that he had control over and just prisoners of wars too.
It's just interesting because it's like art. Like, how do they know what to do?
I will get into that actually.
Okay, because I'm like, is there just one guy who makes arms, one guy who makes eyebrows? Like, it's just fascinating to kind of think of that.
There's actually a lot of speculation.
Okay, cool.
From all over. Yeah, it's wild. It was evident there would be many lives lost creating those statues, but the total is not really known of like how many people actually died. During this process. I'm sure a lot died, and then as Kylie mentioned last week, a lot were killed to keep this thing a secret because they did not want people getting out, because with Tomb Raiders, and it still happened, I'm sure. So it happens. So there was no way someone could say no to their emperor. So a good chunk of the population then was transferred over here. This was a team effort. Quote unquote team effort. So everything was seemingly to be set to perfection in guiding the emperor into his afterlife. And this was that in finding and excavating this area, they noticed that the statues were all lined up in a single file, like in rows, and as if they were marching into battle, or in pit 2, as if they were in battle.
Yeah.
Or dead already, which is crazy. It's like a scene.
Right.
Absolutely wild. So each was particularly placed in the mausoleum and organized. So how, like, I'm sure they kind of set up some but they were all like in that same line of structure that you see them now when you go visit. So the mausoleum is split into 4 pits that each had a particular warrior sectioned in each pit except the 4th. As soon as the site started to be excavated, the museum started to be constructed. So the largest pit, of course, is the first to be excavated. It is the section that holds the dome overhead, and there are as far as the eye can see of these soldiers. This first pit is the focal point of the general army. In the pit, there are 36 columns of warriors that have 3 to 4 warriors per row. So pretty much there's 4 in a row, and it just goes all the way back. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. So the column's length goes about 178 meters, which in American is 584 feet. So in this section alone, there are roughly 4,000 soldiers and 50 battle chariots in this pit. It's pretty legit.
Oh, yeah.
These chariots are freaking bomb ass. They're so cool looking.
Uh-huh.
And they're coated in bronze. Like,
yeah.
Shit. That's heavy.
And they have saddles.
Yeah, like, it's so detailed.
And a lot of people were like, we thought saddles were invented later. Like, they didn't know that they were already invented at that part.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, we learned so much about that time period. Like, what was invented.
Exactly.
Things that they used.
Well, and, like, the chariots used, too. Like, you had some battle ones, but there are also chariots to, like, help, like, to, like, carry stuff in. Like, the normal ones with, like, the hoods and everything. Like, it was... And the patterns were still on there. It's so gorgeous.
Oh, yeah. We're going to post pictures, but definitely go check out more pictures.
Oh,
they're
100%.
really cool.
They're so cool. Oh, I was so infatuated. I was just scrolling. I was like, oh my God.
I was looking at pictures for a while. There's actually a walkthrough where you can see everything.
Yeah.
Somebody made a video on YouTube, so definitely check that out because
yes.
you can kind of walk through it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish they had like an actual website. I couldn't find the actual website to like get a thorough.
Yeah, it's like on like different travel guides through China, but there's no like specific website.
Yeah, which I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's technically just, I don't know. They're still working on it, so
yeah, it's a work in progress. For sure.
I don't know. Who knows? Maybe in the future.
Yeah.
So let's get on to the second pit. In the second pit, though a lot smaller than our first one, the warriors in this pit are a little bit more descriptive of their roles. So in pit 2, you can see more definition on which troops were rich. This includes cavalrymen, archers, chariot drivers, and infantrymen. They decipher each by the clothing that were represented and the weapons that many contained. So they literally carved in like different uniforms of what they would actually wear, because each, depending on your rank, you wore a different armor, and everything was different. And they went into full ass detail on each of them. Is so awesome.
It is.
It's amazing how it's
like they didn't have to go into that much detail.
They really did it, but they did anyway because it was for their emperor.
He was very detail oriented.
Yes, he was. He would post that on Facebook all the time.
Yes. Look at this new statue my man's working on.
Take a selfie.
Yeah.
Does he look just like me? So a unique representation of the diversity in these figures is that pit 2 is that their positions were complex to that of standing warriors in pit 1. So they were also in pit 2, there were archers who were standing, some were constructed to be kneeling. So they literally made these clay sculptures to be kneeling like an archer. While others were leaning on the wall as if they were in battle or if they had been like shot. It's like a frozen scene from a battle.
Yeah.
And some of them didn't even have heads or were laying down like they were already dead. It is freaking wild.
Like the clenched fists and everything.
Yeah. So it looks like they were actually in an intense battle in the afterlife.
Which means you have to think of every single soldier as like, okay, who are they? What are they doing? Or like, what's going on right now?
Yeah.
That they have to fight. Like, you have to think of all those details for every single soldier.
And it's like giving them their own background. Like it doesn't, they don't think that like they were based off like anybody in particular, but like if you're going into the afterlife and you're bringing along like these soldiers to help protect you, they have to have some sort of story.
Yeah.
Like, they're more than just a statue in their eyes.
Right.
So it's crazy how just realistic they made it look, especially in the second pit to have found this.
I wonder if, like, after the first pit, like, Chin was like, I need better. Let's go into more detail. I feel like that might have been, I mean, we don't know a lot about him, but maybe that might have been his decision where he's like, we need more detail.
Yeah.
Because they need to believe that they're capable of fighting back.
Yeah.
You know?
It's wild. I love it. I'm here for it. It's crazy. So pit 3 is the last of the excavated pits currently, technically.
Yeah.
So pit 4 has still yet to be excavated and remains untouched for the time being. You actually, you had that in your notes.
Yeah.
Of,
in 2020.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that real quick?
Yes, because before I get into, because pit 4 is kind of just, I didn't really make a note about it because it hasn't really been touched.
Yeah. I don't have a ton of information, but I did try to find like as much updated information as possible because I was like, there has to be more. Like,
yeah.
Where are we now? This was like the most recent update. So in January 2020, we had a Chinese archaeologist named Xin Maoshin who was leading a new excavation since 2009 when his team uncovered 200 more clay soldiers. And most are either holding pole weapons, bending their right arms with clenched fists, and some are even carrying bows. So just more soldiers that they were able to find. So the new excavation that they found was 750 feet long, 200 feet wide, and 16 feet deep. Damn. And more than 600 clay soldiers and horses. So they're finding them as they're going, but they're a little hesitant to keep going because of the mercury. They're finding a lot more mercury in that area. So I couldn't find a more recent update. Like, I don't know if this is like something that they're currently working on or if they've put a hold to it. But there are also like armor and that where we can see their ranks and everything.
Well, I'm sure if they're finding mercury in that area, they're probably having to bring out specific scientists who are exclusive to that type of like that work.
Yeah.
So they probably have to figure out, okay, how can we go about doing this safely? What do we need to remove without really touching anything? But
they did discover one thing that was really interesting in the fourth pit. And this kind of shows the hatred that people had for Chin.
Yeah.
Because there seems to be something that they tried to dig up. It looks like they tried to dig up his like tomb.
Yeah.
There's a whole entire like little cave pit near where his grave is. So it looks like maybe like a leader after him told them to go dig that up because you can kind of see where they tried to dig it. So they were able to see that in the fourth pit because it's kind of closer to where he is.
Oh,
so
there's no fucking way they're going to dig him up. They're going to die in the process.
I know. And you can tell they gave up. They're like, maybe we should stop. So that was a big discovery that they were able to see. A lot of people think that it was likely led by one of the nobles of the Chu state who rebelled against the Qin dynasty and was very vocal about it. So, I mean, really, it's like the same kind of thing. They've uncovered a lot of like more horses and soldiers, but again, they're just kind of like hesitant to keep going. But that was the big thing, is like finding these little areas that people tried to dig up to get to him.
Yeah, tomb raiders are such a huge thing all over the world, especially in antiquity.
Right.
It's crazy.
But that's like the only update I could really find. So I think they're just really scared to do the rest.
Well, I'm too, like, if they discovered it in 2020, that's high COVID. And I think in the last year is when they finally like opened up more of China. So they probably had to put a hold on it for 2 years.
Right. Yeah, because it's right before COVID. So they were probably, took a break. Yeah, that's very true.
So they're probably still like trying to figure out how they can do this safely.
Yeah.
So I don't blame them.
Right. And like it's open right now. So I don't know. I mean, that's the only update, like, because there's really no website. There's no place that I could find that has updates. If anyone finds it, please let us know.
Yes, I am very curious. I actually want to keep up to date to see what their progress is.
Yeah.
If they continue to go through it, because I don't think they'll ever go into the tomb, as I'll talk about briefly.
Yeah.
For their reasons, but I think they do want to try and get to the fourth pit, but like, I don't know if they'll ever open it to the public if it's going to be high toxicity.
Yeah. Right.
So, I mean, I'm sure they'll figure something out, but
Scientists are smart. They'll figure out a way to get in there.
exactly. With
Trust the
archaeologists,
process.
like, yeah, they want to be smart about it. They don't want to just go in gung ho. Like, they want to make sure that everything's going to be fine
Which,
for
like,
them.
I never thought about that. Like, I never thought about, like, uncovering, like, toxic things like that. Like, I've always just been like, just dig it up. But, like, yeah, you have to think about that because you don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, when you look at, like, I always like to intercept Egypt. But with, like, King's Tut tomb, like,
Yeah.
there was, like, the whole curse thing about it, but it had to have been some sort of disease that was, when they opened up the tomb, it pretty much came out and just killed anybody who's, like, really invested into it. But, like, stuff like that happens, and knowing that, like, we have the technology to, like, be aware of it now.
Yeah.
Because they didn't really have it, like, back in the 20s or even before then. But now we do. So they want to take those precautions, and I give them that.
For sure.
So let's go over pit 3. I
Okay.
got really into pit 4 because
Yeah.
it's so intriguing.
It's a mystery.
But yeah, pit 3 started to be unveiled in May 1976. And from the two other, it is actually the smallest of the group. So pit 3, we got to see some more of the higher rank officers being depicted. And it's closer to the tomb. So, of course, you're going to have your higher officials. You're going to have, like, the little smaller people.
Yeah.
And the biggest one all together. But then you're going to have the highest ranked people all together as well. So I like to see that kind of, like,
He's very
inclusion.
organized. We love it.
Very organized. Very organized. So the soldiers found in pit 3 by their apparel represent that they were high ranks and they stand to command the post for, like, how they were standing, situated, how there was, like, there's kind of, like, how they were protecting was, like, blocking some of, like, the walls and stuff to, like, protect for, like, the tomb that's not even that far away at this point. But it was also found in pit 3 that the discovery of real weapons were used in the hands of the warriors. Because when you look at, like, the hands and stuff, they're, like, clenching, like, wide enough for stuff to be holding in them. And some of them actually were stolen because of tomb raiders, but they found a lot in the tombs, especially in pit 3. They found the most. It is absolutely wild. So a theory that was found plausible was during the civil war that ensued after the fall of the Qin dynasty. That's when raiders came in. They're like, we can take what we want. And but I don't think they ever got to pit 3. I think they only got to, like, the pit 1 where it was, like, all of them.
Yeah.
And took what they could.
And then they were like, we got to get rid of the rest of this.
Yeah. So, or, like, they just gave up because I'm sure the mercury didn't help.
Yeah.
But the weapons that included were spears, bows. I even saw crossbows on the list, swords, and there were also halberds. I don't really know what that is. I looked it up and it was quite interesting. Yeah. But in all the pits, knives were have been discovered in all of the pits. They have found just, like, little small knives, as it was just hand-to-hand combat that a lot of, like, that was part of, like, the Chinese way, was a lot of hand-on-hand combat.
And a lot of the weapons look like they're in, like, excellent condition.
Oh, yeah. It's like they were never touched because of, like, the type of coating that they put on all of them, which left them in pristine condition.
Germany didn't know to do that until the 1930s.
Yeah.
So that just shows you, like, how advanced they are to already have that in BCE, you know?
Yep. They were so ahead of their time when it came to this little stuff. Because I believe he also, Qin Shi also, in his reign, also kind of improved how they would replace stuff on their weapons and whatnot to, like, make it more efficient to like quickly replace, like, broken bits and pieces for when they were in combat. So I was like, that's pretty ahead of his time. And you can kind of see that with, like, the spear blades that they find too. Like, you can easily replace them. So it's pretty cool. So we find the knives in all of them, but primarily we find, like, a bunch of just other ones, like other, like, weapons and whatnot in pit 3. There also was this traditional weapon used that was called a shoe. I did not know what that was, so I had to look it up, and it still kind of gave me confusion. So it's similar to a spear, like the tip of it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have like that triangular diamond like spade blade on it, but it's more like kind of pointed.
Oh.
It's very interesting. But that was like a traditional weapon that they used during that time, so that kind of helped date the era. So, discovered in the pits, there were about 40,000 bronze weapons that they found, which is a lot.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and a lot of them were in their hands, or they were just like on the floor adjacent because they fell out or whatever. But that's a lot of fucking weapons.
Yeah.
So, good for them. Like, that's a lot to make. Like, not only are you making soldiers, but you're making weapons too.
Right?
That will never be used. But, I mean, in the afterlife, they will.
Yep.
So it was also found in their exploration that these statues were more unique than at first look. So a lot of the speculations between historians now were how these statues were constructed. They're like, how the hell did they make these in this short amount of time? Mm-hmm. Like, how did they make over 7,000 of like the horses, the chariots, the soldiers themselves? Like, how did they do it? So there's so many different like methods of how they thought they were constructed. I'm just gonna go over like two, but then kind of like interject like random stuff. So the first was by Professor Wu Hung, and he believed that the heads, hands, and torsos were created with molds, and they were put together. So pretty much they were just like all molded separately, and then they were put together as like construction by using like different coil methods.
Yeah. That's the one that I read about. Yeah.
Yeah, to put them on. And then when it came to detailing the eyes, noses, ears, etc., was all done by hand. So that's what he believed of how they did it. Well, another guy came in. His name is Jixin Jason's son, and he believed that all the parts were molded separately. So even like the face, ears, whatever, and they were assembled with clay together after.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were all put on separately. And there are so many methods of just like, okay, maybe this was actually detailed onto this, or this was laid, like added on. And there's just so many different historians and researchers thinking of like different ways that these clay sculptures could have been put together, because I mean there's so many different ways that they could have been that it's kind of hard to tell after they've been put in the kiln and been completely fired. So it's like, yeah. So there's a lot of assumptions but no definitive proof, but it can also be assumed that the statues were molded as they are hollow. So they are not just full on like clay, because they probably would have exploded in the kiln if they weren't hollow.
Yeah.
So with my little knowledge that I have of ceramics, like if there are air bubbles in them, it's gonna explode.
Oh yeah. We don't need that to happen.
No, because it will kill everything else in there. It will explode everything else. So it's
But again, it's cool that they already know that.
Exactly. They knew like how to go about it. Like I'm sure because there's other sculptures that they use, they knew like the whole process. I just find it interesting that they use the molding.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. That's cool that they had that, because they had to find like a fast way to do it.
Right.
So I wish they had in like the pits still of just like the molding that they used. But maybe along the way they'll find something. Who knows? So the big question is that, okay, so they're hollow. How did they not tip over and like crumble? Like, how did they do that? Because you would think they would be light enough, but actually their weight kept them pretty sturdy. Like they're pretty heavy because it's a lot of clay. Like they're life size. So even though that they're hollow, they were, how they were like positioned and built, it kept them sturdy enough so they're not going to move. Like the pressure that they have like on the legs of it keeps all that weight to keep them upright.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure like a hurricane or not a hurricane, like an earthquake would definitely tip them over like it would a normal person.
Yeah.
But in this situation, like it's not going to, because their weight, like with how they're positioned, like it's the wind isn't going to just like blow them over like normally.
They thought that through.
Yes. So the system was also used through the clay coil. So pretty much like a clay coil is like it's a way how to not get like air bubbles in between. Like if they were trying to place an arm onto like the torso, that they would use like a clay coil that they would like roll out, and they would kind of like mark it. And then that's how they would combine it. So there would be no air bubbles between the two to cause it to explode. This is a very like a common thing that ceramicists use to like combine like their projects together or whatever, like pieces of their project. So it's pretty interesting, and it was keeping the air bubbles away from forming in the bodies to keep that density and like that heaviness to them from falling apart or like falling over in general. Now the drying process would have taken a hot minute to do, because drying clay does take a while. It takes a few days for it to completely dry. And you want to make sure all the moisture is gone before you put it in the kiln, but to make sure it also didn't get wet. So I found in the research that they tried to keep them in the shade so that it wouldn't, and then try to cover them to make sure that they weren't getting caught in the rain. And this was a lengthy process to do that, especially when you have like thousands of them. It's wild. And the firing process was also just as like crazy. I don't know how many kilns that they had. They had to have had several. But it was unique and smart to do so. But they actually had in the mausoleum the kilns, like in the mausoleum himself, like in the pits.
Okay.
So it was easy for them just to throw the completed ones right into the kiln for it to fire. So they probably were working them like constantly, because the kilns fit about 4 soldiers in like the little in the pots that they had, and it would take about 10 hours to complete. So it took a while. And you have 4 at a time, so they probably had several kilns just to make sure that they were firing all at the right time.
So you could really only do like 4 a day.
Give or take, yeah. And I'm sure they're having them go all day and all night. So constantly just trading them in. Plus you have to make sure like 10 hours just to fire them. And then you have to wait like half an hour for it to cool down so you can take them out. And then you have to put the next one in. It's a whole process.
Yeah.
So, and then you have to get up to a certain degree to make sure that like it's hot enough for them to turn into that like ceramic texture and whatnot. So, but researchers have even gone as far as to reconstructing the possibilities of the process of molding and firing to see which method looks like the most plausible for what they did. So a lot of researchers in like the early years of excavating and trying to figure out how everything was created, they were doing all the different possible methods of like, okay, like what if we know that it was hollow, but like what if we combine them this way? What if we put like details on this way? So they were doing like it, they were serious about it. So one thing that they found was that to give details of the face for them, because the face is very well detailed, they actually put an extra layer of clay over it so it'd be easier to carve the like the eyes, the nose, and like the mouth. So they just put an extra layer of clay and kind of like
formed it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm sure they did that with like the hair and the hats that they wore as well.
Yeah.
So it can also be traced that when these statues were made, that they were pigmented with colors, that they were actually painted. They weren't just plain Jane that we see them now.
Yeah.
So bright colors were used, and even on some figures, red pigments remained. That still remain. Like it's very subtle, but you can still see some. A picture I even saw one of the warriors on their collar had yellow still pigmented.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's very different. So the color over time is going to fade, as like we have seen on like Egyptian architecture.
Yeah.
Like it's very plain Jane, but it once was beautiful in color. But when you go into the tombs, it's still all painted, colorful. So you knew that these cultures really loved color, and they were very bright and vibrant. And you see it too in their like architecture buildings, like all the ones that are still standing.
Right.
They were all beautifully colored.
One thing is like the way that like when they uncovered it and it had to go into like the air.
Yes.
That's what ruined it. And I think I read that like the color went away in like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like really fast just because of like you're
air.
underground for so long.
Being exposed to oxygen will do that. And it's so sad, but I bet those 15 minutes, they were just like, these are beautiful.
Yeah. But now they have methods that they use to help keep the color right away when they discover things. Like it's like, I think it's called PEG or something. Mm-hmm. And then they use that so that the color will stay.
Yeah, they've been doing that for the tombs in Egypt because they're discovering more of just like priests and stuff like that.
See, if I could live another life, I think I'd be an archaeologist. I think that'd be so fun.
Oh my God, 100%. I would love to be an archaeologist. It would just be so interesting. It's just like, this is your dedicated work, but it feels so rewarding when you actually find.
And even if you're not the one that finds it, like your team, when they find things, like you get to like geek 100%. Out about it.
Yes, I would love to be, God, what's his name from Expedition Unknown?
Oh yeah.
I want to be him so bad.
Yeah.
God, what's his name?
I can't think right now.
I just watched the show. I don't know. I want to be him though. I want to be him when I grow up. So, each statue is also decorated in Qin armor, each wearing their respective roles. Like the detail they actually had to have carved, I'm sure. Like put extra layers for the armor to carve out and whatnot. And it really shows the detail that went into this mausoleum to show how much the people cared for their emperor to like really represent their next life, but also they had to. They didn't really have a choice. But how detail oriented him and his people were to be like, we need to make it look as realistic as possible.
Right.
Like no substitutions. So in the military at this time, and like how it's now, each rank has specific uniforms and armors that were worn. And each of the pits, every single warrior represented it. So a high rank officer can be differentiated by the cap that was carved into that of like the higher rank or that of a general. So you had one that was like more kind of like you had the flat cap. Mm-hmm. Was one of them, and then there was one that was a little bit more rounded. So that's also how you can tell the difference between the high rank officers. And then they had a lot more decoration on their armor, whereas like in pit 1 you look at just the general warriors, like just the infantrymen, they had a lot more basic attire compared to even like the archers. So you can even see when detailing, like the archers had a quiver on their back that you can tell that arrows were actually placed into. Like they would have the bow in their hand, and then in the quiver, like in the clay quiver, would be actual arrows. It's crazy how they did this.
It's so wild.
It's so cool. Like no one was supposed to see this, but we did. We do. It's crazy. So each warrior thought potentially was all made from molds, no matter what type of detailing when it came to rank, but they also all had different facial hair, and their eyes were different shapes as well as their heads. Like they all had these unique features, even though they were all made from molds. And I'm sure now that it makes sense with having 700,000 people working on them, that if they're detailing their face, they're going to look different.
Right.
Because everybody's going to do it differently.
That's true. Yeah.
So it does make them unique. Like they figured, well, it had to come from molds. But if you have all these different people making these, they're not going to look the same.
Like someone's like, I don't know how to draw on eyes.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Literally. But they all did a phenomenal job. Like all of these people are artists.
Yeah.
That were involved. So kudos.
They probably knew if they didn't do well that bad things would happen to
them. 100%. 100%.
You're like, I have to make this nose the best nose you've ever seen.
So as the excavation grew closer to the actual tomb of Qinshi Hagandi or Huang, but it still has yet to be excavated, and I don't think it's going to be. There are multiple reasons as to why it has still been left alone. For one is that it's not even his tomb, but in pit 4, they're already getting traces of mercury.
Yeah.
They're like, hell no.
Yeah.
This is no.
There's a lot in the soil.
Yeah, and one of the most important reasons is that the people do not want to see their first emperor, their first emperor. Why can't I say emperor of the Qin dynasty dug up, as he has been at rest for 2,000 years, and they don't want to disturb him.
We don't need to dig anyone up. I think that's something that should never be a thing. Like, don't disturb the dead. I know it's been thousands of years, but you would disagree.
I mean, I love Egyptology.
Yeah, it is cooler in Egypt for some reason. But I don't know. I mean, I don't really see the need of digging him up.
I'm really rooting for them to find Cleopatra, though.
That's fair. That would be pretty
I want to know how she died.
I know.
God, it's driving me insane. Like, we already know how this guy died. Like, he literally took pills of mercury.
Yeah, he's like, woo, let's go. The elixir of life.
But I think they really held to their... I really don't know. I don't know. I just... I don't know. I guess my perspective is going to be different from other people's. Like, some people really cherish, like, their dead.
Yeah. You just want all the answers.
I do. I'm a very curious person, and I would much rather cremation be a thing, but whatever.
I like the idea of staying curious for some things, like dead people. We don't need to see them. Now, these soldiers, yes.
Like, when I went to the Egypt exhibit that they had up in Denver, I didn't care for the mummy parts. For me, it was the architecture and the objects. That's what I was most interested in. Mm-hmm. I did not care for the mummies because I'm like, I don't want to look at a dead body.
That's how I feel. Exactly, yeah.
But when it comes to just like the face masks and stuff like that, that's what I'm more, like the object part of it, that's what I'm more interested in, because I love the everyday life stuff. Just like when I see like a pair of shoes from like 2,000 years ago, I'm like, how did that exist?
Right.
But
it would be interesting to see like what's near him too.
Yeah.
Like what he kept close to him.
Exactly. Like that's what I'm more intrigued about. I'm like, leave him alone. I want to see everything else that he took with him.
Yeah. Just like don't look at him. Just look around him.
But like leave him alone. But like I'm curious to see like what he brought into his afterlife.
Yeah.
But I mean, they don't want to do it for me, like other reasons, so it's crazy. So in documentation by historian Sima Chin stated the tomb is filled with brilliant treasures and wonders that would help guide the emperor for the afterlife. There is the possibility of the tomb containing replicas of palaces and objects that were unique and rare for the time. So a lot of wonders. Yet still have yet to be obtained to the high enough technologies for this to like actually see this. So I saw in one of the pictures of one of the websites I was on, and it had like a generalization like picture of what it could possibly look like if they of what his tomb could actually look like. It had like replicas of like the different buildings that were important to him, like the palaces and then the rivers and then all of his treasures. And I'm sure like more like warriors with him and stuff like that are all there. And I'm sure like gold and like jewels and stuff like that, like all these beautiful, like just wonders and beauties and unique stuff. Like who knows, maybe, you know, maybe the chalice of, oh God, what is it? The Holy Grail might be in there. I don't know.
Right.
So,
so much
possibly,
wonder.
like, who knows? But of course they're like, no. So archaeologists hope that sometime in the future we can get to this point of technology where a scan can tell us below without having to be like disturb the area. Like they're also fearful because it was also said that there is potentially booby traps all over the place too.
That's true. Yeah.
Of crossbows. So like as soon as like you take a step in, you're dead. So that is like not something. That's probably something that the raiders were probably terrified of. Like I'm going to die coming in here.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he did not mess around with
Yeah.
those types of things.
And I'm pretty sure the people who buried him are probably died in there with him because of all the mercury.
Yeah.
But they're probably just on the floor.
They're just next to him, like.
But it's shady. So they're hoping, though, because like that's like the goal of technology that they want to get to, is that they can just like wheel like a camera over it and get like a visual representation of what's below.
Yeah.
That's the goal. So they don't have to disturb anything.
That's amazing.
And that we can just get like a 3D vision of what is potentially down there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure with like the Pit 4, if it's close enough to the tomb, if we have that technology in the future, that they would be able to just put it against the wall and get that vision, that perspective, and just kind of dig around it.
Yeah.
To get physical photos of it.
It's so cool how advanced we are now.
Yeah. But I mean, we haven't gotten to that point, but
Right.
that's like the direction.
But we're getting there.
Yeah. I think it's sometime in the future. Plus, I feel like people would be more comfortable with archaeologists and with them doing that type of work.
Yeah. It would make
So-
their lives easier.
Exactly. So you're still able to visit the location and add to the list if you visit here. A cool part of this, too, is that this site had gained so much attraction that in 1987, it was listed as a World Cultural Heritage Site by the UNESCO. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really cool.
It is cool.
So, and I know you have a little bit more information about
Visiting.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I found this on one of the like travel guide websites because again, they don't have a specific website.
Yeah.
But you can book a tour. A lot of them recommend using like a travel agency. It's just a lot easier that way because they can kind of show you like where to go. You can see it all in one day. So the peak season is March 16th to November 15th, and they're open from 8:30 to 1800. And then the off season is November 16th to March 15th. They're open from 8:30 to 17:30. So they just close a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But you can see all the three pits and the bronze chariots and horses and the expedition hall and everything. It costs 120 Chinese dollars, which is about 17 US dollars.
Oh.
Yeah.
That looked a lot more expensive when I was checking online.
Yeah, that's the best. I mean, maybe I did it wrong, but I was looking from like Chinese to, it was at 120 Chinese. So,
Oh, well, it said 160 something, but I guess that's like a whole day trip
maybe,
thing.
maybe there's like a package or something, but
Yeah.
they say you can book tickets at travelchinaguide.com. You do need your passport requirement and everything. They want to make sure you ain't sketchy.
Wow.
And then be careful to avoid traps. I thought this was really interesting, but there are actually a lot of people in like fake buses wearing fake uniforms that drive around and pretend to take you there. And they actually have a whole area that is fake. And they call it like it has the same name, but it's completely fake.
What?
They like created it to make it look like it. It's not as big, obviously, but yeah. So sometimes they'll take you to the fake one, and then they'll charge you for different things at like the stores.
What?
So be really careful. Do not go in those buses. And that's why you should probably use like a travel agent.
Yeah.
I love that they had that on the website because it's happened to so many people.
Oh my God.
They'll say like, hey, you want to go to the Terracotta Army? And then if you're like, yeah, let's go. And they're going to take you to a weird place. So yeah, there's more tips and tour routes on the website. So you can actually, there's a lot of details on there on this website specifically where it shows you like, you can go this way, you can go this way. And then like what to bring, the best time to go. A lot of them say like, you should avoid this time because of these holidays. So if you're like really interested in this and you want more info, definitely go check out that website because it's going to give you all of that. So it was, let me find the thing again. I mean, I don't know if any of you are planning a trip right now, but
To China, of all places.
right. But if you're like, you know what, let's go, then you can book it through travelchinaguide.com.
Nice.
So, yes.
So that is the Terracotta Army warriors. It is such a cool place. It really shows how much Chinese culture, especially during this time, cared a lot about their emperor, but also we discovered so much more than we thought.
Yeah.
Like with the saddles, and then with pretty much just like other things that we found, like on
weapons.
the weapons. Like,
yeah.
It's crazy.
We learned so much about the military too, like with all the ranks and everything.
Exactly. So it really shows just like the transition of like the everyday infantrymen to the higher up officials. Like, it's crazy. And then just how much they cared for, like, how much the afterlife really did impact them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many other of like these emperors had something like this?
Right. I feel like there's so much more out there like this.
Yeah.
So.
And it could just be under a field and we would never know.
Yeah. So if you're a farmer, go dig those wells. See what you can find.
You might just find something special.
Maybe not America. I don't know.
Gold, maybe?
Yeah.
Or you might run into a Native American burial ground, and then
that's true.
You'll definitely want to leave because it is haunted.
Yeah. Stay away.
So, thank you for tuning in for China's history lesson today.
That was fun. It's fun when we like both have info about it, you know?
Yeah. That I like doing that. That was fun.
Heck yeah, we should do it on purpose sometime.
Oh, God. Where can you find us?
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, at History of the Podcast. You can also email us at historyofthepodcast@gmail.com.
Woo!
Woo! We will talk to you next week.
Have a good week. Bye.
Bye-bye.